Amos chapter 5. Hear this word which I take up against you, this lamentation, O house of Israel. The maiden of Israel has fallen. The maiden of Israel has fallen, not to rise again. It's interesting that it says this because we know that Yahweh, in a way, made a change from the Israel of the flesh to the Israel of the spirit. And obviously, those of the flesh have the first ticket for entrance, but if they reject Mashiach, they lose their place for someone who, even being from the Gentiles, by accepting Mashiach, will be able to enter. So the maiden of Israel has fallen, right, by rejecting Mashiach. By this time, Mashiach had not come. I'm just saying prophetically. The maiden of Israel has fallen, not to rise again. She lies forsaken on her land with no one to lift her up. Also, remember that it says Israel, so because of the fact that he's talking about her fall, it refers to the many. For thus said Yahweh, for thus said the sovereign Yahweh, the city that goes out by 1,000 has 100 left. The city that goes out by 1,000 has 100 left. And that which goes out by 100 has 10 left to the house of Israel. So this pretty much saying how the many will have to die. You see how it's talking about 10%. 1,000, there's 100 left. 100, there are 10 left. 10%, like we just saw in the previous chapter regarding tithes. And remember, that starts with Mashiach and then the chosen few. So here, the 10% would represent the chosen few, the 144,000 who don't die. But many will. The city that goes out by 1,000 has 100 left, and that which goes out by 100 has 10 left to the house of Israel. For thus said Yahweh to the house of Israel. And let me see where it says left, just a second. Verse 3. You see here the word shade. Shade. Sounds like it, but it's not shade, the mountain of Edom, but it is referring to remnant, what normally is translated as remnant. So confirming that he's talking about the remnant. It says, the city, which is also interesting, the word play that Yahweh is doing here, because that is Ha'id. Ha'id, Tashaid. So we have Id here, but another Id. This is city. So the city that goes out by 1,000 has a remnant of 100. So the remnant are the 144,000. So that confirms it. Now going back to English. For thus said Yahweh to the house of Israel, seek me and live. That's a beautiful verse. Kiko Amar Yahweh Lebeit Israel Dirshuni B'chayv. Seek me and live. But do not seek Beitel, nor enter Gilgal, nor pass over Beersheba. These three places are mentioned in the one that we were talking about earlier in Kings. Let me go there for a second. So look how it says that Eliyahu went with Elisha from Gilgal. We have one. Eliyahu said to Elishua, please remain here, for Yahweh has sent me to Beitel. We have two. And then we continue. Yeah, the other one was Beersheba, right? And in this case, we had, but Beersheba appeared later on. Oh, I went to chapter 3, just a second. Here we go. Oh, yeah, the other one that appeared here was Jericho. Here it is. Beersheba does appear in the book, but not in this chapter. So, two of the three. Do not seek Bethel, right? Which would make reference to the house of the mighty one. Remember what we saw in the previous chapter, those who went to Bethel to transgress, right? To kill Mashiach, but also those who gather and claim to be gathering in the house of the mighty one, yet they worship the wrong mighty one, like El, Saturn, as I was mentioning, Kronos. Do not seek Samael. Do not seek that which is material. Because remember that the true house of the mighty one is the body, mainly the body of Mashiach, and the body of Mashiach is the congregation. So his house is one made of flesh, not of stone. Samael is connected to that made of stone, the idols and matter itself. Nor enter Gilgal, a circuit. And in the sense of the order of the Satans, that would be Halel, which in a way, with him, the story of Samael was repeated because he became another angel who had authority over all the angels and ended up falling. So the story repeated with him. And then it says, pass over to Beersheba. Beersheba, the well of the oath, or the oath of seven, the well of seven sides. Like I said, that is the well of the covenant. Yahushua came to make a new covenant, and he is the water of life. But the enemy, the false Messiah, claims to be the one who made the covenant, and he claims to be the water. So this, and obviously the reason why is because Yahweh is saying, do not go here, do not seek this or that. He's referring, do not seek Samael, nor enter into Halel, nor pass over to Azazel. The doctrines that come from those three, which are represented by what we see in the names and what happened there through the apostasy of the Yahudim, following Baal and their idols. Do not seek the house of the mighty one, nor enter the circuit. Do not enter the repetition of history. Do not become like they have become through their wicked deeds. Nor pass over to Beersheba, nor pass over to the covenant, to the well of the covenant. That is verse 5. But do not seek Bethel, Behagilgal. This is interesting because this would confirm that it refers to Halel. Look at the name Hagilgal. Hagilgal, we have 5. Then Gimel. Then Lamed, we have 5 plus 3 plus 30, that's 38. And then another Gimel and another Lamed. So we have another 33. So 33 plus 33, that's 66, plus 5, that's 71, right? 71. Remember that there were 70 nations, and an angel, Halel, placed over those 70 nations, so he would be, in that context, 71. Remember, Mikael over Israel, the set-apart nation, that will make 72. But since it is set apart, if we set it apart from the first 71, Halel will be connected with the number 71. Not only that, the wheel, that's also, Gilgal, that's what it's called, circuit, a circle or a wheel. And that's what they also call fortune, like the wheel of fortune, right? Because it's all about luck, just like luck comes from Lucifer. And just like luck or fortune goes from one place to another, from one person to the other. So that having to do with Gilgal, because of the number and because of the meaning, it connects with Lucifer. Like I said, Bethel, because of the house itself made of stone, connects to the idolatry, worshiping matter. And since I looked at the numerical value, let me see. Numerical value would be 412, 443. 443, and then we have here Beersheba, which was the last right here. Beersheba, 574, 75. All right, so continue. But do not seek Bethel, nor enter Gilgal, nor pass over to Beersheba. And like we just saw, Eliyahu went through these places, and even Beersheba appears later in the book, but he went through these places before he was taken up by Yahweh. And in a way, he was testing Yahushua while going through these places, which would represent going through the three filters that we must go through in life, like the three veils, represented also by Lot, Moab, and Ammon, Samael, Halel, and Lucifer. The veil on the face of Moshe, which is the veil of the flesh that is taken off with death. Then the veil at the entrance of the temple, and then the veil at the entrance of the most set apart place. Bethel is the body, so it connects with that first veil that is the flesh. Gilgal and Beersheba as the other two. The last veil being Beersheba, which is the veil that we go through for the covenant to be renewed or fulfilled with our lives. Making a covenant with the well of life, represented by Beersheba. So, for Gilgal shall certainly go into exile, and Bethel become a non-entity, which is like saying that death will stop existing. Samael will be a non-entity. It doesn't mention Beersheba. And as we know, as I was saying, if it connects with Azazel, it has to do with what still has to happen in the end times as the false Messiah. But as we know, Halel will go into exile because he will be kicked out of heaven in Revelation 12. He will be kicked out of his place. So he will be going into exile into this reality. And Bethel becoming non-entity, and death in this reality, falsehood in this reality, idolatry will be non-existent. Also, Yahweh makes a play on words here because it says Hagilgal, Galo Igle. You see how Gilgal is composed by two Gimel Lamed, repeated, and then he used the Gimel Lamed here with the Hey at the end. So he uses the beginning of Hagilgal backwards. And then since he is confirming this same word here, he uses it, but conjugating the word in third person, masculine, future, Igle. So once again, same word, but with a U, which represents the deed, the hand of Yahweh doing it. And since Bethel, like I was saying, connects to the house of stone, it says, Yihyeh le'aven. See this word right here, aven. Let's go to the translator. Potency. So substance, that's why it says non-entity. Because he has a word right before. Yihyeh le'aven. My point is this word right here, aven. But if we turn this, which this word, this letter right here would be working as a V. But if we turn it into a B, which would be a bet, we have stone. Aven, eben. Right? And like I have said, there is a way in which when you switch letters that sound similar, you find other interpretations, connections between words. So in this case, by changing the vav with the bet, which in this word sounds similar, we get eben, which, like I said, that was the main material used for the temple. So it says, and Bethel will be not a non-existent or non-entity, also will be for stones. So like Yahushua said that every stone from the temple would come down. It's nothing but stones. Not like people think regarding the temple. So verse 6, seek Yahweh and live, lest he break out like fire upon the house of Joseph and shall consume it with no one to quench it in Bethel. This is amazing, beautiful, and another confirmation of what I've been saying regarding the last. Remember that the last comes from Joseph. He comes like a consuming fire, and he will be killed in a place represented by Bethel. And that is what will bring punishment upon the earth. There's another connection here, or confirmation of that, and that is in the book of Obadiah. Verse 18, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, but the house of Asaph for stubble. So the house of Joseph will be a flame, like the last being the flame, the consuming fire, the chosen few, his house. So seek Yahweh and live, lest he break out like a fire upon the house of Joseph. Now the house of Joseph, like here is talking about punishment. And from Joseph came Ephraim. Ephraim is a title or name used for the many. So that's what he's referring to. After everything we have spoken about already, and the mentioning of Israel right here. Seek Yahweh and live, lest he break out like fire upon the house of Joseph and shall consume it with no one to quench it in Bethel. O you who are turning right rule into wormwood. Another confirmation that Amos is talking about the end. Because if we go to the trumpets of Revelation 9, here it is. And the third messenger sounded. Remember how we saw in the previous chapter of Amos, the famine? And we went to Revelation 6, where the third seal is the famine. The third seal will bring hunger to the world. Now Amos refers to wormwood. And that connects with the third messenger, the third trumpet. And the third messenger sounded, and a great star fell from the heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the fountains of water. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. So the first part connected to lack of food, now a lack of water. Not only by the lack of rain, but also by contaminating the fountains of water of the earth through that star called wormwood. Oh, you who are turning right rule into wormwood. So the third trumpet and that star falling to the fountains of water will happen because of people not doing right ruling, because of people not being just. O you who are turning right ruling to wormwood and have cast down righteousness to the earth. That's why a star called wormwood will be cast down to the earth. Verse 7. He who made Kima and Kesil. He who made Kima and Kesil, and who turns the shadow of death into morning and darken the day into night. Similar to what he said in the last verse of the previous chapter. Now, this is also important. Let me go to the concordance. See, Kima. Kima is the Hebrew name of the constellation of 7 stars that is very beautiful, that is within the constellation of Taurus, the bull. Oh, this is very nice. First time I see this. Kima, some say it's actually Sirius. Very nice, huh? And that I find it as a confirmation, and I will say why in just a moment. So some say Kima is Sirius. Like I have said, it is also said that Abrak is the name of Sirius. These 7 stars are also seen as the 7 congregations. The 7 congregations of Revelation 2 and 3. In fact, just since they are appearing on this chapter, let me just open Stellarium for a moment. We have the firmament. You see these beautiful stars. We can see 7 with the naked eye. They are in the constellation of the bull, which is interesting because, okay, remember that Joseph, like I said, is connected to the bull. The last comes from Joseph. He's called a bull or an ox. These 7 stars are the 7 congregations that the last comes to harvest or take to the Father. Also, well, in that case, well, they also said that some interpret that Kima is not this cluster of stars, but that it is actually the star Sirius, which we see here, right? From the constellation of Canis Major. What? So here's Sirius, and they say that is Kima. And when Joseph, the point is that I kind of find a connection with both because, like I said, Joseph is connected to the bull. But Joseph, when he went around Egypt and everybody was saying before him, well, they were saying, bend the knee, abrek in Hebrew. But abrak is the name for Sirius. And they used to kind of worship Sirius in Egypt through Isis. But also because when Sirius would come up, they would start the year and the Nile would flood. So they would connect the flooding of the Nile with the star coming up on the horizon. So it was very important to the Egyptians. So when Joseph came to Egypt, the Nile flooded. So they made a connection between Joseph and Yaakov, in fact, as well, to the star Sirius and the bringing of water. But in between these two, we have Orion. And this is the belt of Orion, made of these 3 stars. These 3 stars that point to Sirius, in fact, in the heavens. So they are kind of connected. They, in fact, say that Sirius is the dog of the hunter, Orion. So now, after having seen these, let me go back. So the first was Kima. Remember that the last comes from Joseph. I just mentioned all the connections that I won't repeat again. But Ma is also another word connected to the last. Remember, me in Hebrew means who. And the who connects to Mashiach the first, who reveals the Father, who is like the Father. The last is the ma, the what, or how to do things, what to do, what did he say. So the last comes to reveal the ma, the what. That's why the first is wisdom. The last is understanding. The who and the what, the me and the ma. Ki also not only is the crown in the hand, like he who is given a crown, who is the hand of Yahweh, who brings understanding, etc., etc. But also in Hebrew would mean like, or well, like would be the kaf, but with the yud, would be because. So I find this very interesting, very wonderful. It was the connections I have mentioned in the past. Oh, you see, in fact, the word is translated as cluster. So if it is translated as cluster of heap or heap, it would not only refer to just Sirius, but also Canis Major, most likely, which is the cluster or constellation of Sirius. And the numerical value would be 75. Yeah. All right. Then the other one mentioned is Kehila, which is Orion, the constellation of Orion. And in the heavens, we just saw it. In the middle, we have Orion. You cannot miss it in the firmament. Those three stars just call the attention so much, and then the rest of the constellation of Orion. But next to it, to the left, we have Sirius, which is possibly Kima, or the constellation of the bull, like we just saw. So let me go back. He who made Kima and Kehila. Right. As I was saying, seeing the constellations, you see, like we could see this as if Kima is Sirius and Kehila is Orion, which I guess in that one there's no issue, then they two, the both of them would be fighting the bull. And in that case, yeah, we're talking about making these two would be the first, the hunter, and the last. He who comes first and then he comes behind, right? Like the good shepherd and his dog, first and last. Fighting El, the mighty one of this world, the golden calf, Samael, death, etc. On the other hand, if it is talking about these stars, then it would be the fact that Yahweh made both who fight against each other. He has control over everything. And it could be because in the negative, Orion would be Nimrod in the negative, fighting the descendant of Joseph, the bull. And we could continue, but I find interesting that Nimrod has this skin of an animal here, like the one that he would wear to have control that we were reading in Yashar. But anyways, I will continue. So, he who made Kima and Kehila, and who turns the shadow of death into morning, and darkened day into night, who is calling for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth. Who is calling for the waters of the sea, like you can see the waters of the sea going up to the clouds, and then the clouds go to the mountains, and they become rivers that go back to the sea, which is a metaphor of the life of man going to Sheol, and then Yahweh making them come back to this reality of the living. Who turns the shadow of death into morning, resurrection, or reincarnation, the shadow of death into morning. Somebody who woke up after having been dead. So then, and darkened day into night, who is calling for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth. Yahweh is his name. Yahweh is his name. Yahweh Shemo. Who is flashing forth destruction upon the strong. so that destruction comes upon the stronghold. They hated the one who reproves in the gate, and they despise the one who speaks the truth. Two people, the two witnesses, also first and last. I know I say this a lot, but it needs to be understood in the context of the entire history. When the scripture mentions two people, it refers to first and last, but in the sense that history would repeat itself within history itself, right? Like the repetition of the coming of Mashiach and John the Baptist. Now the two witnesses, they will be hated, rejected, and killed. In that case, the two people mentioned in scriptures refer to the two witnesses, either the two in Revelation 11 or Yahushua and John the Baptist. They hated the one who reproves in the gate. Remember that Yahushua is the gate. So there is one like Eliyahu opening the gate, preparing the way, for instance. And they despise the one who speaks the truth. Yahushua is the truth. The last is the messenger of Yahushua, the messenger of truth, the faithful witness. So he will speak the truth, but people will despise him for that. They hated the one who reproves in the gate, and they despise the one who speaks the truth. Isaiah 59:15. Isaiah 59, verse 15. And the truth is lacking, and whoever turns away from evil makes himself a prey. And Yahweh saw, and it displeased him that there was no right ruling. So they hated the one who reproves in the gate, and they despise the one who speaks the truth. Therefore, because you trample on the poor and take grain taxes from him, right? Which they do take taxes for everything nowadays. They tax the money you make, and then they tax you for spending that money they already tax you for, right? And there's a tax for everything. You have built houses of hewn stone, but you are not going to dwell in them. So many rich people and some not so rich are building houses at the moment that they will never use. They will come down during the end, during the plagues. Some people are building a house and they will die before they can get into it. Somebody else will enjoy them. You have built houses of hewn stone, but you are not going to dwell in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but not drink wine from them. For I know your transgressions are many, and your sins are great, afflicting the righteous and accepting bribes, and turning aside the poor at the gate. For I know your transgressions are many, and your sins are great, afflicting the righteous and accepting bribes, and turning aside the poor at the gate. That is, I guess, understood in the literal, I hope. In the spiritual, as I said, Yahushua is the gate, and there are a lot of poor people trying to find Yahweh through the gate that he made. Yet when they come to the people that are supposed to be there to open the gate, they are the ones actually closing the gate before the poor, or telling them about a different gate. So turning aside the poor at the gate, like saying, no, it's not here, it's over there, you should go that way. Therefore, the wise keep silent at that time, for it is an evil time. The wise keep silent at that time, for it is an evil time. And since it is an evil time, right, the end times we're living in, that's why the Son of Man would come like a thief in the night. So the wise stay silent because they know it's an evil time. So in the sense that the lack of joy, but also because they know that if they speak the truth, they will become prey, as we just saw. Therefore, the wise keep silent at that time, for it is an evil time. Seek good and not evil. It is amazing that this has to be said, but Yahweh has to say it several times in scriptures because we live in a world where they say good is evil and evil is good. So Yahweh has to make a separation as he does, for he is a set apart one. Seek good and not evil so that you live. And let Yahweh Elohim of hosts be with you as you have spoken. The only way for Yahweh Elohim to be with us is if we seek good. If we stop doing evil, then he will be with us. But people think that Yahweh will be with anybody just because he made them. They think that Yahweh accepts any type of sin because he allows sin. They think he tolerates it, that he accepts it. In fact, some even claim that he loves it, which makes no sense. That makes it clear that they are speaking about Satan, for they don't know the true mighty one. Seek good and not evil so that you live, and let Yahweh Elohim of hosts be with you as you have spoken. Hate evil and love good. Just in case this was not clear, this should be. I always mention everything that Yahweh created has a purpose. Everything he created is good because he made everything and said that he was good. In the book of Genesis, right? So even hate is good if you use it correctly. You should not hate your neighbor. You should love your neighbor, but you should hate evil. So hate is good if you use it correctly. It was created for us to hate evil, because if you hate something, you stay away from it. So if you hate evil, you'll stay away from evil. And that is good, because that is true intelligence, as scripture says. The true intelligent person is the one who goes away from wicked deeds, who turns away from evil. Hate evil and love good. So hate was made for us to hate evil, and love was made for us to love good. And as we know, Yahushua was told good, and he said, Yahweh is good. The Father in heaven is good. So we must love Yahweh and hate evil deeds. Hate evil and love good, and set up right ruling in the gate. It might be that Yahweh Elohim of hosts shows favor to the remnant of Joseph. So you see how we mentioned here about the many of Ephraim who will have to pay with death. But then he mentions here the few who follow the descendant of Joseph. Those few who hate evil and love good. Set up our right ruling in the gate. Mashiach. It might be that Yahweh Elohim of hosts shows favor to the remnant of Joseph by saving the chosen few who follow the descendant of Joseph. Therefore, Yahweh Elohim of hosts, Yahweh said this: there is wailing in all open squares, and in all the streets they say, Alas, alas, and shall call the farmer the morning, and shall call the farmer to mourning, and skill lamenters to wailing. And in all vineyards there is wailing, for I passed through your midst, said Yahweh. Yahushua said, I am the vine, the vineyard. Israel is the vineyard if it is connected to Yahushua. His blood is the wine. So the true congregation is a vineyard. Israel is a vineyard. But many people have planted their vineyards in a strange place, meaning with different seed as well, different doctrine, different spirit. So it's a different wine, a wine of idolatry, the wine of the great whore. That's why in all vineyards there is wailing. There will be wailing in the false churches, those who have the wine of idolatry. For I passed through your midst. Remember what Mashiach said in the book of Revelation. Let me go to Revelation 2, verse 16. repent, or else I shall come to you speedily, like the word Boaz, the pillar Boaz, fleetness or with speed. I shall come to you like Boaz and fight against them with the sword of my mouth. So he's talking to a congregation of Pergamos. I know your works and where you dwell, where the throne of Satan is. That Satan is Zeus. Zeus, also called in English God. So Yahweh is saying that he's coming to the congregations where they worship God, and he's going to have to fight with those teachers who are teaching of God instead of Yahweh. Repent, turn back, or else I shall come to you speedily and fight against them with the sword of my mouth. And in all vineyards there is wailing, for I passed through your midst, said Yahweh. So he will pass through the midst of the false congregations in order to fight their leaders. Yet people are expecting something completely different. First, they are not expecting anybody coming to their churches. And second, they are expecting a lamb instead of the lion. Back in the day, they were expecting the lion, but they received the lamb and they rejected him. Woe to you who are longing for the day of Yahweh. Oof, that fits perfectly with what I just said. Because they are expecting a lamb, so they are hoping for the day of Yahweh because they are expecting something else. But they don't know what is coming, sadly, because they were taught lies. Woe to you who are longing for the day of Yahweh. What does the day of Yahweh mean to you? Right? For them, it is a rapture. For them, it is nothing. It's just disappearing and appearing in paradise, in heaven. But that's not what the scripture says regarding the many, at least, or the nations. The transformation will be for the few, and it will be after 3.5 years of 10 plagues. Woe to you who are longing for the day of Yahweh. What does the day of Yahweh mean to you? It is darkness and not light. As when a man flees from a lion, right? The lion, which connects with Babylon, also with Satan, who is like a lion roaring, looking for whom he may devour. As when a man flees from a lion, and a bear shall meet him. So one may flee from Samael, but he will encounter Lucifer, Halel. He will flee an enemy, but being killed by the other one. Like I have mentioned, the Jewish people, like most, I don't know if all, but most religions only have one enemy, one Satan. They don't make the separation. And that will confuse them at a certain point, because Jews, the Jewish people who reject Mashiach, they see Samael as Satan. So they end up worshiping Lucifer as the mighty one. Christians, they have Lucifer as Satan. Depending on the doctrine, some end up worshiping Samael as Elohim. Others end up worshiping Azazel as Elohim. Others, amazingly enough, end up worshiping Lucifer himself still. Others, Asherah, right? Like Mary. So, as when a man flees from a lion, and a bear shall meet him. He flees from one, but gets captured by the other, because they do not recognize the other as an enemy. They are just paying attention to the lion. They don't see the bear also hungry. Also remember that the kingdoms that these animals represented were first Babel. Nebuchadnezzar had the dream of the statue, and the head of a lion was, the lion with the wings of an eagle was Babylon. Then came the bear, which was the Persian Empire. Cyrus entered and conquered Babylon. And then he says, or over here, or enter his house, rested his hand on the wall, and a serpent shall bite him. You see how it mentions 3 animals, just like it mentioned 3 places: Beitel, Gilgal, Beersheba. Now it mentions a lion, a bear, and a serpent, like Samael, Halel, and Azazel. A bear shall meet him, or enter his house, right, where anybody would think they are safe, rested his hand on the wall which is supposed to protect, and a serpent shall bite him. So in the least expected place, and like I said, where they feel the most safe, as they do in their churches, in their beliefs, with their idols, yet they are worshiping Satan's serpents. Is not the day of Yahweh darkness and not light? Right? It is referring to the fact that when the day of Yahweh begins, it will begin with plagues. Remember that the day of Yahweh is said to begin in the 6th seal. So the day of Yahweh will start with the trumpets. Well, the 6th seal, which is pretty catastrophic. Then the 7 trumpets, and then the 7 plagues. Is not the day of Yahweh darkness and not light? Is it not very dark with no brightness in it? That's why Yahweh will take us from this reality by that time. About, a year and a half after the day has started. And as we know, a day is 1,000 years. So a year and a half, the first year and a half of those 1,000 years will be here. And then he will take us away for 3.5 years when the wars will happen over here on this earth. Is not the day of Yahweh darkness and not light? Is it not very dark with no brightness in it? I have hated, I have despised your feasts. This is important. He's talking to Israel, who started celebrating, Israel as a people who rejected Mashiach, they followed a false calendar. So their feasts are not the feast of Yahweh, because even though they claim are the feast of Leviticus 23, they celebrate them on different days, different times, and in different ways, because they are focused always on what happened in the Exodus, instead of understanding that which happened in the Exodus is a reflection, a prophetical parallel of what will happen. And therefore we need to celebrate the feast on time, because that is the time in which we have an appointment with the Father, and when he will fulfill that which already happened in a different way. That's why the word Gilgal, so clear, so key. So I have hated, I have despised your feasts, your festivals. I don't like festival because it is kind of like saying a feast of Baal, right? So feasts, and in fact, he hates them because they will worship Baal, so it kind of fits. But I have hated, I have despised your feasts, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. They don't assemble to praise Yahweh. They don't assemble to know more about his will or to expect the fulfillment of prophecies. They assemble themselves in a time that is not that of Yahweh, according to the commandments of men, to follow the letter, thinking about the past, not focusing in the future. Plus, Christians, they don't even celebrate the feast of Leviticus 23. They celebrate Christmas, the end of their year, which is not the end of the year, right? On December 31st. That's just the end of the 10th month, which is December. And not even exactly the end of the 10th month, you know that already, but I'm just saying it is close to. So how interesting that we are reading this right now, right after they have celebrated Christmas, and right before, we are right in the middle, right before they celebrate the end of the year. The whole world goes crazy for Christmas and the end of the year. And look how Yahweh is saying, I have hated, I have despised your feasts, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Yet they say, no, he loves it. He doesn't mind. Why would he care? It's just a feast. It's just a party. It's just a reunion. It's just a tradition. Then why would he say that he hates feasts? Unless it is because they are celebrating somebody else, something else. And that is a type of worship. When you celebrate someone, you are worshiping someone pretty much, in the sense of, or maybe the word is too strong, worship, but it's similar as in praise, right? It's a way to praise somebody in the sense of when you give a compliment to somebody, right? That is a way to praise somebody. You are good looking, you are great, you are this, you are that. And that's why I give you this. I give you a feast, I give you a party, surprise, right? So it's all connected. I have hated, I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Though you offer me ascending offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Mentions 3 offerings: ascending offerings, olot, which are offerings that were sent up through fire, like the 2 witnesses. Grain offerings, an animal didn't have to die, but from the harvest they would take grain, wheat, which represents the chosen few, bikurim. Nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Like I said, the shalamim, that would be the sacrifice of Eliyahu. So we could say first and last, the chosen few, Eliyahu. Though you offer me ascending offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them. Those that come from them, who reject Mashiach, of course, I do not accept them. The only way for Yahweh to accept anything from us is if we accept what he sent, his son. If we accept the Messiah, then he accepts us. Nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings, no matter how fat and tasty those animals, that flesh may be. Yahweh is not at peace with them, so why would he accept peace offerings? They are not at peace because they have not accepted Mashiach. And the only way for Yahweh to be at peace with you is for you to have accepted Mashiach and for your sins to have been forgiven. So if one person doesn't accept Mashiach, he's not at peace. He shouldn't bring peace offerings because Yahweh won't take them even if they are fat. Take away from me the noise of your songs. The songs that they sing, no matter how well put those words may be, if their hearts are away from the Father, that is just noise. No matter how good musicians they may be and how wonderful the sound may be to the physical ear, in the spiritual is just noise if it comes from a person who doesn't accept Mashiach and who doesn't love their neighbor. That's why it is sad that many churches, many people believe, and not just churches, because also synagogues and stuff like that, they believe that worshiping is just that, just singing and dancing and jumping up and down. And they do not understand that Yahweh won't accept that singing, those songs, if they are not doing right, otherwise, like regarding his commandments. If one is not following his commandments, he's not actually praising Yahweh. And when he claims to be praising Yahweh through music or whatever, that is just noise to Yahweh. Yet a lot of people think that that is praising, and they go and act like they always do, but they take a time to sing and what we did it, right? But they don't take a time to love their neighbor, to do the commandments. Also, and obviously, I'm pretty sure that some people would use this verse completely opposite of what I'm about to say, or even against me, since I make music. A lot of people think that for instance, the music I make is evil because it doesn't fit the idea that they have regarding music of the scriptures for praise, because they are of the idea of wherever they came from, right? Because obviously the Jewish people will listen to their Jewish songs, Christians will listen to their Christian songs, but they have an expectation regarding how a song should sound. And since they have that expectation, they believe that's how Yahweh expects also the music to sound. So when they hear something different, they are like, oh, that's not good. That's evil. That's wicked. That's satanic. Just because it doesn't fit their box, right? Their idea of how it should be. But we see here, and obviously it should be obvious that Yahweh is referring to songs that they would use to praise in the temple. So obviously they sounded as good as they could. And that is the type of music that a lot of people would now say, oh, how beautiful. That must be so good for the Father. He must be loving it. However, Yahweh is saying that is noise because it comes from people that do not accept me. It comes from people who do not accept the Messiah. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your stringed instruments. Right? That is like saying, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing sin. I'm hearing your heart thinking evil towards your neighbor. That's so much noise that I cannot hear you playing the instrument. Hope that's understood. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your string instruments. And let right ruling roll on like water. Yahushua is the water of life, and he is the one through whom we receive the Ruach HaKodesh in order for us to do right ruling. And let right ruling roll on like water, verse 24. Vaigal Kamaim, and roll like water of judgment and right ruling as a river. Eitan perseveres. Look how it says here, Vaigal, right? Which is, you see here, the same letters that are the root for Gilgal. And you see his roll, like the circuit, like a wheel, rolling over, in this case, like water. And it says, and let right ruling roll on like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. Mighty stream, we saw a stream over there, and then he said, I forgot the words he was using before. Sorry, go back. Kanachal, which is the stream. Eitan, mighty. Mentioned persevere, which is another translation of Eitan. That's why the month of Eitanim, the month of those who persevere, because he who perseveres till the end shall be saved. And it is in the month of Eitanim that the chosen few will be transformed during Shemini Atzeret. Let right ruling roll on like water, like the water that will come out of the beast, but the earth will swallow, like the many who will be justified after their blood is spilled, and righteousness like a mighty stream, Eitan, like the chosen few who are like a river of life, because they are the body of Mashiach. My point is that this verse right here can be referring to the same or the separation of the many and the few. Let right ruling roll on like water, Yahushua, the water of life, and righteousness like a mighty stream. And this also connects with the early rain and the latter rain. Water, mighty stream. You brought me slaughterings and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years. So it makes reference to the Exodus. Just like in our times, there will be a second Exodus. Remember that Yahweh made water come out of the rock in the beginning of the 40 years and at the end of the 40 years, like the first and the last. In the first, Moshe hit the stone with the scepter and water came out. That was representing that Mashiach, the cornerstone, had to be killed in order for the life to come. Then Moshe was told, speak to the stone, but he hit it again. So he had to die to represent that the two witnesses had to die. Just like Moshe and Aharon died because they hit the stone after the 40 years when Yahweh said, just speak. You brought me slaughterings and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, just like there has been 40 jubilees since Mashiach came. So the 40 jubilees were represented by the 40 years in the desert. That's why the apostasy of the last 2,000 years, 40 jubilees. You brought me slaughterings and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel. Listen to this verse. This is a very important verse. And has a couple translations just in case. But you took up Sikut, your sovereign, and Kiyun, your idols, your astral mighty ones, which you made for yourselves. So in this translation, they put Sikut as a false mighty one and Kiyun. Kiyun is Saturn, Rempham, depending on the nation, how they would worship him. So this is Samael, Kiyun, Kronos, time, Saturn, etc. Sikud would be the other one. However, there's another translation that says you took the tabernacle or the Sukkot of Moloch. Instead of Sikud, your sovereign, they translate it as the tabernacle of Moloch. In this case, it would make reference to Lucifer. So Yahweh is saying, and well, just because of that I mentioned the difference in the translation, let me just check it out. Right here, 526. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Kiyum, your images, the star of your mighty one, which ye made to yourselves. This verse is so important. Melech, which is king, but this is the root of the name Moloch. Moloch, which is a false mighty one, the one that would ask for children to be killed, pass through the fire. Then Sikut. Sikut is a tent. That's why they wrote tabernacle. But it was also a Babylonian deity. That's why some translate it as you worship Sikut, which would be a deity that would cover them, a mighty one that would cover them. So they would prefer to be covered by Sikut than to be covered by Yahweh, by the Ruach HaKodesh. And lastly, Kiyum, an image or a pillar, a statue of the Assyrian Babylonian god of the planet Saturn. Just like they also worship him nowadays through images and pillars. Here we see Saturn. So also, if we go here, I'm just going to write the talisman of Saturn and you'll see what appears. So that would be the talisman of Kiyum. And we go to images. And look at this. This is the Saturn talisman. You see? So you can see right there, it has in the middle Saturn, El, Kronos, the bull, Taurus, the first era, and the moon, confirming that it refers to Samael, the mighty one of darkness, of the night, the golden calf that they worship coming out of Egypt. And Yahweh is saying, not only you worship Kiyum, but also Moloch, which was also represented by a bull, or Sukkot. But then it says, the star of your mighty ones, which ye made for yourselves. So Yahweh is telling them, you made a star to worship your two mighty ones, your two false Elohim, Samael and Halel. What star? the talisman of Saturn, which they took from Egypt, and which Solomon received from his Egyptian wives. That's why he used it, and it's also called the seal of Solomon. David never used this star. David, Rockefeller, he did though. But David, the king, he never did use this star because it is a star that Yahweh is against and he hates, as he just said in Amos 5:26. So I hope that is understood. The 6-pointed star is a star that represents Satan, that Yahweh hates, and that is mentioned in Amos 5:26. It has 6 points, 6 triangles, 6 sides. So it represents the 666. Remember that it is made by a pyramid or a triangle going up. Like Lucifer said, I shall go up over the stars of the firmament, and I will place my throne next to the throne of the Most High. So Lucifer is trying to go up to be worshipped. But Samael already fell down in the beginning of time. So Samael is the triangle going down. Halel is the triangle going up. And the combination of the two is Azazel, the false Messiah, 666. So this star represents 3 Satans, which is interesting that through translations we get Sukkot, Moloch, and Kiyum, or just Moloch, Kiyum, and the star. So the triangle going up is Lucifer, the triangle going down is Samael. It's interesting that Lucifer is connected to fire. Samael is connected to water. He came out of water. The triangle going down is the symbol for water. The triangle going up is the symbol for fire. And the combination of fire and water makes heaven. So that's why the combination of these 2 triangles makes a star. And the stars appear in heaven, right? So there's much more, I'm sure, but let me just go back. So that is the talisman of Saturn. And you see how the other side has 5 points. So one side, the 6-pointed star, another side, the 5-pointed star. The 5, well, depends on how you see it, is connected to Samael, but also to Lucifer, as well as Baphomet, right? Therefore, Azazel. But my point is, these 2 stars, one each side of the talisman of Saturn, and they are both used in witchcraft. So this is such an important verse, but I'm gonna have to repeat it. You brought me slaughtering and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel. Also, if I'm not mistaken, there are some translations that put this as a question, as saying, you think you brought me? Here it is. Have you offered unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel? Right? It is a question. Like saying, you think you brought me those sacrifices? Don't lie. You were bringing it to your false Elohim. Verse 25. The sacrifices and mincha, meal offerings. All right, so you brought me slaughtering and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel, but you took up the tabernacle of your sovereign, Moloch, but you took up Sikut, your sovereign, and Kiun, your idol. So they had 2 idols, Lucifer and Samael, while they were in the desert. So that's the 2 Elohim that were receiving the worship. During 40 years, They thought they were following Yahweh and worshiping Yahweh and doing sacrifices to Yahweh, and I'm sure they would still say so if you ask a Jew. But Yahweh himself is saying, no, you were worshiping your star, the star that represents your two gods, Samael and Halel. You were not bringing slaughtering or meal offerings to me. But you took up Sikud, your sovereign, and Kiyum, your idols, your astral mighty ones, which you made for yourself. So a lot of people complain when they hear me explain, and I'm sure they do not understand, and that's why they complain. But regarding the time when death ruled, then the prophet, the law and the prophets, and then favor and truth came with Mashiach. And I always explain regarding the different administrations. First Samael, then Halel, and then Mashiach came to take over. But those who did not accept Mashiach end up under Azazel, the third Satan. So here, this is a verse that is key to understand that, and that I think should be enough, but still people go against. Because Yahweh is saying, you were not bringing sacrifices to me, you were bringing it to Satan. You were not with me in the desert, you were with Satan. That star that you were is not mine, it's Satan's. Right? That's what he's saying. But still people don't get it. So where did they get the Torah? In the desert. At the beginning of those 40 years. And that's why we see in the New Covenant that Moshe received the Torah by like him being one and Yahweh being one, but he received the Torah through different angels, at least a couple. So like I said, Michael and Halel, at least. So, therefore, I shall send you into exile beyond Damascus. I shall send you into exile beyond Damascus, said Yahweh Elohim of hosts, is his name. So because of the worshiping of false mighty ones through that star, the six-pointed star, the people would be sent into exile beyond Damascus, to the whole world, to all the nations where we were born. But Yahweh is revealing his name, as it says here as well, for us to come back to him. So that's how that chapter ends.